Yeah, my background is an adaptive physical educator. I work a lot with children with disabilities and physical activity environments. And so we're constantly making accommodations and adaptations to successfully include them into physical education, fitness type areas, from building strength to cardiovascular. Anyway, what I noticed and what really jumped out at me is if you think about the different senses, things that would be accommodating or adapting to people with visual impairments or hearing impairments, or people who come from different backgrounds with intellectual disabilities, or folks from the autistic spectrum. So in addition to what they kind of address were some physical disabilities, but really if you look at the elements, there's, I think, a wheelchair or a bigger swing, but all the other elements don't really cater to that need, which I think is a pretty glowing need that we need to address. So things such as putting, ropes from element to element, to having maybe soft beeping from element to element, so that you can accommodate. My background is an adaptive physical educator. I work a lot with children with disabilities and physical activity environments. And so we're constantly making accommodations and adaptations to successfully include them into physical education, fitness type areas, from building strength to cardiovascular. Anyway, what I noticed and what really jumped out at me is if you think about the different senses, things that would be accommodating or adapting to people with visual impairments or hearing impairments, or people who come from different backgrounds with intellectual disabilities, or folks from the autistic spectrum. So in addition to what they kind of address were some physical disabilities, but really if you look at the elements, there's, I think, a wheelchair or a bigger swing, but all the other elements don't really cater to that need, which I think is a pretty glowing need that we need to address. So things such as putting, ropes from element to element, to having maybe soft beeping from element to element, so that you can accommodate people with visual impairments and they can guide themselves as they go through the elements. They have little beeps or different grades of surfaces, so that they can tell when they're entering an element, when they're on an element, when they're exiting the element. So we really try and capture different senses of need. And the elements the pictures that we've addressed so far, like a sandbox can do some of that because it can address a tactile need. You can put different little toys in the sandbox that have different textures and surfaces, which is another sense that we want to address. But really, allowing kids with various disabilities to come in and being able to enjoy themselves, and also, which I think is a greater mission in any folks that I've come across that work with kids with disabilities, is to make them feel independent. And so if they can come in here and this is an opportunity for them to explore, to foster their imaginations, and at the same time feel they're empowered and taking control of how they make their way through the playground, I think is also a good talking point, and something that we're trying to address. Although we don't really, I don't think we can capture the kind of creativity or customization of the type of equipment that we would need to get, and that's something that we'll need to explore for sure.
We know that's going to come with the cost, and that 32,000 square foot facility, which they did, that ended up being $975,000. Now, partly because I think it was partly design and creativity and some afterthought and all that stuff, and we don't feel that. But we also know we've been doing other research. I don't know, do you have the other one from, okay, from the next one? I just wanted to have him point that out, because we truly want to incorporate more than just one or two elements to this all-inclusive playground. We want to hit all elements to it.
Thanks, guys. No, I'm apologizing. I'm just overly passionate about this thing. So we are building more than just a sandbox. And as Kevin said, there's a lot more to this. So one thing I did want to mention is, and I'm glad you brought it up, was the independence. I thought that was really that struck me. And this one right here is actually, it's kind of hard to see, but what it is, it's a teeter-totter that you can drive your wheelchair onto, and you can teeter-totter. I thought that was kind of cool. So that, again, it brings that element of independence, and you know, these pieces of apparatus are much more expensive than just a sandbox. So I apologize for being
No, you're fine.
too passionate about it, but I certainly,
No.
I wanted to make sure that I captured it. That is a good point. Again, we want to hit all the elements. We don't want to leave anyone out. Our mission, as I stated, numerous times, it's to be all-inclusive. It's to be all-inclusive. So, now that you've seen a couple of pictures, you kind of have an idea of where we're going, or at least a frame up in your mind what we're looking at. So how are we going to build this thing? What's our plans for construction? Well, we're obviously, we're going to engage a real professional architectural and landscape engineer so they can tell us what we don't know. And they're going to, yet to be defined that person, but we're going to ask that person to phase the project and, in essence, put mini projects together for us. So it's doable upon bits or chunks that we can accomplish in a defined period of time. And at the end of that period, we can say, it's a usable, workable playground, and then we can continue to expand, given the volunteers, given the funding, et cetera, et cetera. And that's one of the things that, as Neil mentioned at Matt Morris that we saw, is they had some afterthoughts and some creative design elements that they put in. But one thing they did do is they made everything expandable, so they can take things and expand. As Neil mentioned, that tree fort concept, the walls can be removed and they can add a different element coming off of it, or they can bridge off to another section. So we want to do the same thing. But the important thing is each project or each phase, our goal is to have something that's usable at the end before we can move on to the next. So we've been about, how are we going to do this thing? How are we going to do it? And what could be a possible path forward? And so, let's see what else is out there. And one possibility that we're tossing around is it's a concept of it's a community-built playground. It's a community event, and kind of modeled after, as we just hatched the idea. Let's do it after like a Habitat for Humanity type situation. And we did some research on the web, and lo and behold, someone has already done this. So we looked at it, and I'll show you a picture there of their website and what their project looked like. But it was a community-built playground, and we said, well, hey, that would be a great idea. You guys can be part of this larger puzzle, larger jigsaw. I mean, you can help us make the picture of the whole by you just being that one piece. So the playground that we found online is called Possibility Playground, and it was a brainchild of one person. Her name was Marty McGarry, and she was a special needs school teacher in Port Washington, Wisconsin. She came up with this idea of a community-built playground. She was able to raise enough money for through donations and other individuals, etc., for the playground, the materials, etc. She got all that raised. The community came out, and as it looks in droves, and it is a pretty cool website if you get a chance to look at it. But the community came out and they volunteered their labor, their service. They could help construct it all, and they put all this together. And at the end of the day, they can all say that I was a part of that. It was me, as the community representative, I helped to build that playground. So we thought that was a cool idea. And again, we're still open to that. That may be a way that we go as a community-built playground. Just a thought out there, but what I can tell you is it works. It has been done before. We're not blazing a new trail on this, wild idea